Our first speaker, Senator Patricia Bovey, was appointed to the Senate of Canada in November 2016 as an independent senator from Manitoba. The first art historian and gallery professional and museologist to be appointed to the Senate, she works on legislation, committee studies, regional concerns, and national and local arts issues. She regularly speaks about the arts' impact in every sector of society, ensuring the voice of arts and culture is heard. A Winnipeg-based gallery director, art historian, professor, and arts and culture management consultant, she has published widely on Western Canadian art. Former director of the Winnipeg Art Gallery, the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria, my town, and founder of St. Boniface Hospital's Buehler Gallery. She was appointed the Winnipeg Art Gallery's Director Emerita in 2014. A founder of the University of Winnipeg's Arts and Culture Management Program and MA in Curatorial Practice. She is a former chair of the University of Manitoba Board of Governors and past member of the boards of the National Gallery of Canada and Canada Council for the Arts and Federal Museums Task Force member. Recipient of many awards and honors, she has frequently represented Canada internationally. I know she told me to keep it short, and this is the shortened version, so we know there are so many more things we could say about the Senator. The Senator is here with us to set the stage, sharing inspirational elements towards our work here today in building an arts impact community. We will be monitoring the Zoom chat for your questions, so you can put those in as you're listening, and these will be read out by Naomi at the end of the Senator's presentation. Senator, I welcome you to the virtual stage. Please take us to your presentation.
What an amazing introduction. I did say keep it short. We don't really need it, but thank you. I feel very warmly welcomed, and I have to say it's a real pleasure to talk to you all today. I've met with some of you over the years a number of times, and some of you I'm meeting for the first time, and please, it's a real treat to have been invited to speak to you, especially knowing that we're all on the same page to ensure wide awareness and support for the truly important impact the arts have on society as a whole. And I speak to you from Winnipeg, located on Treaty Number 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Innu Cree, Oji Cree, Dene, and Dakota, and the birthplace of the Métis and the heart of the Métis Nation homeland. I want to start by other thanks. Many of you, and I thank all who did, for participating in the focus groups for my declaration respecting the essential role of artists and creative expression in Canada. More than 600 artists and art workers from all ages, diversities, and disciplines from all parts of Canada took part and gave me their advice. I can assure you that every word and every nuance has enriched my work. Some comments supported my views from having worked in the sector for decades. Others pointed me in new and critically important directions, and others corrected my approach, and I thank all. The declaration is now in legislative legalese. I will put it on the floor of the Senate as soon as we reconvene in the fall, having decided not to let it get enmeshed with the issues and situations the Chamber faced this spring. COVID-19 severely and naturally changed how we worked and what we focused on. The declaration's 10 points embody all the issues raised in those discussions, and it defines timelines and directives to the minister, including required consultations with other ministers and arts sector representatives. I have been asked to speak to the House of Commons Arts Caucus with members from all parties. And in that session, I will also, of course, discuss other arts issues and initiatives on my plate, which I'm discussing with you today. Your theme is inspiring, building an arts impact community. My subtitle is How to See What's Already There. So where do we go next? There is no question that the arts are critically important to every aspect of society. I have measured those impacts over several decades, both qualitatively and quantitatively, through empirical and anecdotal data. The impacts are substantive. The problem is that those impacts are not widely known, but they're mired or encaged in silos and seen as things that people do in their spare time if they have money to do it with. So let me share some perspectives of both my Senate and pre-Senate lives. As you've heard, I am the first art historian and museologist and gallery director to be appointed to the Senate. And when the Prime Minister appointed me, he gave me the mantra, quote, to work on everything, but to do so through the lens of arts and culture. And that is what I do, what I have done, and what I will continue to do. Using Martin Luther King's words, I do have a dream. and that is to de-silo the arts. So let's celebrate the arts vision and societal values with V words. In addition to vision and value, let's use voice, vibrancy, venting, vocalizing, though not always to be voluntary. I don't like us being called the voluntary sector. We should articulate the non-negotiables of and for the arts and set timeframes and specific achievable goals, as in any meaningful strategic plan. The arts, essential to society, air, articulate, and proclaim who we are. And Robin, if we can start with my very short, rather mirthful PowerPoint, I'd be grateful. So for me, society or community is like an onion, embodying many diversities. The plant has deep roots, as you can see, and strong above ground green growth woven together up its stem. The onion has layers. However it's sliced, when one layer is peeled away, another shows itself. Onions have been medicinal and a healing diet for centuries. They're depicted on wall paintings and early Egyptian burial sites and have been a key food source for thousands of years. Likewise, the arts have portrayed key spiritual beliefs, psychological and historical realities, and all life's patterns for thousands of years, consistently depicting the essence of humanity, place, ideas, and contemporary times. You can see that community for me includes citizens, immigrants, refugees, and tourism. And it includes belief and behavior, trust, reciprocity, multiple networks, and therefore multiple impacts. When working on the impact of the arts, I developed my octopus, which you see here. Each of its 8 tentacles represents one of the 8 key issues governments of all levels and political stripes deal with. Those range from employment. The sector is the 3rd largest employer in Canada. Who knew? A major contributor to the economy at over between 2 and 4% of the GDP per year, and a critically important element to health and wellness, as people who attend live arts events live 2 years longer, cost the health system less, miss less work, and get out of hospital after elective surgery a day or 2 earlier than those who don't. Indeed, when I founded that public art gallery in St. Boniface Hospital, ministers of health, both federal and many provinces, asked me what I was doing. My reply, I'm helping you with hallway medicine. We also know the core role the arts play in learning and in the clear warnings and articulation of environmental issues. Indeed, it is my hope that Canada's museums will lead climate change awareness and initiatives as they're uniquely positioned to do. I could go on with this. The arts have proven to be very impactful in preventing crime and reducing recidivism. Indeed, I spoke about that in the chamber just the night before last. And perhaps I can address some of these specifics in our question and discussion time. You get the idea of my visual. So what now? I used to think my logo should be a hamster wheel on top of a pogo stick because I thought I was running and I wasn't sure I was getting anywhere. Now I have to think I'm a combination of that multi-layered onion and a multi-legged octopus. So I want to look at those layers. First, the role of a senator. My job is threefold. It's legislative, representative, and investigative. So first, I represent my province and also strongly the arts nationally in all their dimensions, and I need to hear from you to do that properly. Secondly, legislative work is embodied in bills. Legislation of particular concern to me now includes my S205, the Parliamentary Visual Artist Laureate, twice unanimously passed in the Senate, and now for the 2nd time in the House of Commons, sponsored by MP Lenore Zan from the East Coast, who gave her 2nd reading in the House last night. And I have to say, I got a real buzz because MPs from the Conservatives and the NDP and the Liberal all spoke in favor of this bill. And it was so nice to see people of all political stripes heralding arts and artists. So I'm very hopeful that there'll be a positive vote in the fall. Unless, of course, there's an election, in which case it would die on the order paper, and then I get to introduce this in the Senate for the 4th time. So undaunted and unthwarted, we're going to go on. UNDRIP C15 is very important, and I'm delighted it finally passed in the Senate chamber last week and was proclaimed as law this week. It is a critical step towards reconciliation and of great importance to me. So too is the new citizenship oath, Bill 8, which was also proclaimed this week, and its guide to include information on First Nations history, culture, and I hope art is in the making. It too was a bill I voted for and fully supported. C10, the Broadcasting Act, has had a very difficult run in the House of Commons, but you know, it's a priority for me. It reached the Senate yesterday after its House of Commons middle of the night vote at 1:30 a.m. on June 22nd. We are receiving hundreds of emails protesting this bill, accusing the government of cutting the freedom of expression. This bill does not cut freedom of expression. What it does do is finally insist that internet providers pay artist fees the same way broadcasters do. I'm really proud of artists of all disciplines who during this past very hard 18 months put their work on the internet, often filming it in their kitchens. And they put it in the internet, giving hope and diversion and psychological strength to people all across Canada. But I'm very concerned that they were not paid for their professional work. And this bill addresses that. Here we are, one of the largest employers with more people, the highest percentage of working poor living below the poverty line, giving of their work and not being paid. And that's what I want this bill to address, and I will speak to it. Thirdly, the investigative work is done through our committee studies and within our own offices. I'm just going to tell you what I do so you can get a sense of the dimension and the threads that I'm trying to tie together. I currently sit on the executive of the Official Languages Committee, where I'm pushing Indigenous languages. I'm deputy chair of the Social Affairs and Science and Technology Committee, which is where arts discussions take place, and the Rules, Procedures, and the Rights of Parliament. And I've served on the Foreign Affairs and International Trade Committee and Transport and Communications, and I'll talk about them now. When I was on the Foreign Affairs and International Trade Committee, they agreed to undertake the cultural diplomacy study, cultural diplomacy at the front stage of Canada's foreign policy. It took a while before they agreed to my request, but when they did, I'll tell you, it took off and it illuminated the committee for a whole year. I was really keen that the role and support of Canadian artists and arts be on the international stage and be reignited and funded. It now has been adopted, led by Global Affairs with participation of Heritage Canada and the Canada Council for the Arts. I have followed up with all and will continue to bird dog this initiative. I think it's important. The Canada Council has appointed a Director of Cultural Diplomacy and International Programs and a new Commissioner for UNESCO. I have spoken to both and both are truly supportive of these directions. I will be meeting with Global Affairs Director of Mission Support dealing with cultural diplomacy in the next week or two. I met with her several times when she was at Canada House London. I want to thank Clayton Windat particularly for his contribution. He was a witness to that study. He was the one who galvanized the issue of artist resale rights into the copyright revisions, and I monitor them with much care. The Senate Special Committee on the Arctic included the arts as being central to Northern issues. Indeed, that Senate report, Northern Lights, a wake-up call for the future of Canada, was, I believe, the first Senate report ever to reproduce contemporary Canadian art. I looked after the copyright rights because the Senate lawyers had never done it. That work really underlined how key the depictions of artists were in demonstrating the interlocking of so many societal issues, from climate change to transportation, food security, abuse, shifting lifestyles, spiritual cultural roots. I could go on, security and more. And would you believe this art historian, to my surprise, was made deputy chair of the Transport and Communications Committee when they were doing the study on autonomous vehicles released in 2018, Driving Change, Technology and the Future of Automated Vehicles. I know nothing about cars save how to drive my 1999 one, but I got hooked and learned the very real contributions artists made to this emerging field. Indeed, OCAD was a very important part of that work, as were many city planning programs and university planning programs. So you can appreciate my sightlines regarding arts impacts are indeed multifold. Some relate to artists, some to organizations, and some to society as a whole, but all are integrally intertwined. They include copyright, artist resale rights, issues with art theft and illicit art trade, which I spoke about the other day, initial and legal appropriation and mass reproduction of Indigenous images and cultural and family crests, and I've asked questions on that, repatriation of Indigenous art, and cultural works, and also the return of looted and ill-gained war-stolen art. In the fall, I plan to launch a Senate inquiry drawing attention to the critical issues of repatriation and the fundamental differences between repatriation of Indigenous cultural pieces and the return of war-looted art, a difference few Canadians outside Indigenous communities know and or understand. So reconciliation is so essential in my view. The financial well-being of artists is likewise key. Artists and arts leaders have been forthcoming to me in their needs, enabling me to forward a number of suggestions to both the Minister of Heritage and the Minister of Finance during this pandemic and the recent budget. Many have been implemented, and I thank the ministers. I do support a guaranteed minimum income, basic income, as despite the arts and creative industries being the third largest employer, as I said, artists continue to be the largest percentage of working poor in Canada living below the poverty line. Incidentally, business leaders have said for years that they prefer to hire those with arts training, as the arts teach problem solving and three-dimensional thinking. Canadian art has new international opportunities too. As Canada's member on the International Curatorial Council for the Pan-African Heritage World Museum, I sincerely thank artists of all the creative disciplines of Canada's Black community serving on our discussion team and those who have agreed to be on the Content Steering Committee. The steering committee will define the themes for discussion by the larger group and appoint curators for the exhibition in this Ghana museum set to open in the fall in 2023, as well as those for the virtual exhibitions slated for 2022. And this is multi-dimensional and multidisciplinary. Canada is being given a place of honor in the building, given we're looking at telling our stories, the bad, the good, the indifferent, and the tremendous work that Black artists have done. We're doing it through the eyes and ears and voices of artists. And we're also being given a special place for our virtual exhibitions. In 2023, the World Police and Fire Games, the second largest international games after the Olympics, are being held in Winnipeg, and will include a significant arts component in accord with UNESCO agreements for international sporting events. And I have met with a member of their board and they have concurred with this. You can guess the tourism boost that will bring to the community and the window it will give on the arts. The essential role of the arts for well-being of individuals was a key message I brought to the UN recently when speaking to the proposed UN Convention for the Human Rights of Older Persons. We do need to champion these impacts as often and in as many contexts as we can. Within the Senate itself, the role of the arts is increasing, I'm pleased to say. The Artwork and Heritage Advisory Working Group, which I chair and we met this morning, has 4 new initiatives for which we received startup funding, and in time it'll involve all of you. The first is Cultivating Perspective. Next, Honoring Canada's Black Artists, Museums in the Senate, and the National Gallery ordained Senior Curator of Indigenous Art, Greg Hill's very important and excellent gap analysis of the Senate's Indigenous art. Cultivating Perspectives brings Canadian voices into the Senate. One curator from each province and territory representing cultural diversities of Canada was invited to write about an artwork or heritage piece currently installed in the Senate of Canada building. Providing a national context for these works, these essays extended the knowledge of the Senate's collection to wider Canadian audiences from the perspectives of professionals in the art and museum field. Together, the visual voices of artists and the thoughts and context of the curators underline the importance and insights of creative expression in Canada and the many linkages to lives and lifestyles across our country. 8 participating curators were women. One was Inuit, one Mi'kmaq. Some were emerging, some experienced. 2 chose objects, 1 the metal photo murals in the Senate, 6 selected works by Indigenous artists, 1 being Inuit, 2 chose speakers' portraits, and 1 chose a sculpture. The balance of works authors selected and the substance and perspectives of their essays is to be commended. On June 14th, the essays and images went online bilingually, with 1 in Inuktitut and 1 in Mi'kmaq. I sincerely thank the authors and the artists and artist estates for their copyright permissions. This fall, 13 more curators of various diversities and disciplines will be invited to contribute to this project, and I look forward to receiving names of those who might be interested. Greg Hill's gap analysis of Indigenous art in the Senate made 19 forward-looking recommendations to improve Indigenous artists' representation and presentation. His lead recommendation has already been endorsed by SEBA, the Senate's most powerful internal budget and administration committee, to change the name of the Aboriginal Peoples Committee Room to the Indigenous Peoples Committee Room, making it inclusive of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Other aspects of Mr. Hill's report will come forward in coming months, and I will be inviting several Indigenous curators from across the country to advise us on the implementation of the steps he articulated. And that was our agenda item this morning. The Museums in the Senate program will be launched this fall. The first annual installation in Committee Room B30 will be art from Nunavut's collection, stewarded by the Winnipeg Art Gallery. This installation aims to build bridges between North and South. In future, other museums and art galleries from across the country will participate, each contributing their public trust. I hope going forward, we will be able to host 2 institutions annually, not just one. Our Honoring Canada's Black Artists Project will present its 2nd installation in September, and I will be requesting advice from Black curators within the regions we are featuring. The first iteration, which I curated, was small, with only 2 but powerful works, one by Chantal Gibson of BC and one by Yisa Akambalaji of Manitoba. It was the first presentation of art by Canadian Black artists in the Senate, and to my horror, I believe the first on Parliament Hill. It's drawn fantastic responses nationally and internationally, and I thank both artists. Now to challenge you, the arts sector, for critical next steps towards greater impact and awareness. We and I need your help for these and more legislative and societal awareness changes regarding the perception of the arts. First, you're going to be shocked by this. I think we need to get rid of the idea of grants in favor of investments. I'm tired of holding our porridge bowl out, asking for more. The public thinks we're whiners and not self-sustaining. Well, actually, the facts don't bear out that perception. I examined 3 years of grants and taxes and found that in each year, the arts paid back to the various levels of government 3 times more in taxes than the total government's collective grants budgets. Interesting, isn't it, that we are the sector who pays back 3 times in a year what we were given? I wonder what other sectors have that record. So I ask, why don't we in our sector value our own work ourselves and seek investment in what we do? Why don't we work with every ministry at every level of government and develop contracts with them to advance their goals, which can't be advanced at all without participation of the arts? I firmly believe every ministry at the federal and provincial levels have strong arts connections. After all, aren't we businesses? Don't we have people of multiple careers in our organizations? Aren't artists independent businesses, thus attending to all the facets every other business has to attend to? The interest in the arts is increasing among my Senate colleagues and those in the House of Commons. My office is getting more and more calls from them for advice, assistance in their speeches, and indeed just for basic information. I find that encouraging. Your support for these initiatives is very important. Your lobbying of your MPs and senators on issues key to you is valuable, and honestly, it's listened to. So too are Hill Days, and I know they're hard to do, to organize, but please, it's a very effective way to keep your voices heard. In conclusion, as John Rostenthal has so often said, quote, culture is the motor of any society, end quote. And I quote Mavor Moore, playwright, the former chair of both the Canada Council for the Arts and the British Columbia Arts Council, where he was the first chair. He wrote a number of years ago, quote, the root meaning of culture, as every farmer and chemist knows, is preparation for growth. And in our communities, we are growing people. Folks, I believe these statements are just as apt and valid now as they were when they were made. Let's not forget that the arts do grow communities, but to do so, they must be healthy. Arts impacts are everywhere, and I haven't even talked about the arts as a key base for tourism, which is huge. Without healthy arts, we would have a very unhealthy tourist sector. Let's look at hotel room use. 22% of Toronto hotel rooms alone are booked for arts attendees. So please, we need to voice those impacts loudly and proudly. And I am here to work in whatever way I can. We have work to do and sensibilities to awaken. So let's do it together. And I thank you, and I really look forward to discussion.
That was so powerful, Senator Bovey. Thank you so much for that. We have a couple of questions in the chat, and I would like to thank everyone who's contributed as well. So our first question is from Claude, who says the point 7 of the octopus is the environment. How do you
Yes.
see the arts increasing their impact and relevance in the climate emergency?
Well, I have to tell you that I believe the arts have been doing it for decades. I believe the first environmental, I'm going to return to my visual arts roots of Western Canada, if you don't mind. To me, the first outspoken environmental visual artist was Emily Carr, with her paintings logged over in some of those works that she did in the late 1930s. And I have to say, when I was director of the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria, many British Columbia artists and artists from across Canada protested the logging in the first growth logging as they are now. And I thought it was very sad that they got criminal records. I believe that our museums have in their collections all sorts of objects and history, be they the human history or natural history museums or cultural museums, that document these environmental changes. And indeed, there's a whole museological group internationally working on this, led by Canadian Robert Janes from Calgary and Martin Seger from Victoria. So there are a whole lot of us involved in this. So that's my new mission on that one. But if we take a look at what's been written, you take a look at what poets have done, what novelists have done, what's in some of our operas, what musicians have done. The arts are a voice piece, and I believe artists and scientists, as I said in the Senate chamber just the other day, are 20 years ahead of everybody else. And not me, I'm not an artist. It's our artists who put that clairvoyance out there in advance as to what society has to look at. So I believe the arts are there, and I challenge you to do it, and I'll talk about it anytime you want me to.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our next question is from Rebecca. Looking at the octopus, I wonder what is the best way to advocate for the arts with government. Is it the money that the art drives? Is it arts? What are they looking for to feel motivated to assist us?
You know, that's a really good question, and it's one I've wrestled with for decades. And it's really why I started the program in public administration, arts administration at the University of Winnipeg. And I taught in one at the University of Victoria. I think we have to use our tentacles and use all of them simultaneously. I remember asking graduate students to go through the list of ministries in Manitoba and tell me which ones related to the arts. And all of them said culture and heritage. Some of them said education, and very few said anything else. So I had them look at which ones did not involve the arts. I'm going back to the late 1990s with this, right? And I believe I have statistical information and anecdotal information on all these 8 tentacles. So I talk about all of them all the time. Governments love to hear that the sector is the 3rd largest employer. They're shattered to hear that there are more working poor living below the poverty line in the arts sector than anywhere else. They're amazed at the effect our contribution to GDP, and in fact, a Conservative member of Parliament mentioned it in his speech for my Visual Artist Laureate bill just last night. As far as health, we've got the stats. They've been worked on by the medical community internationally. So it's not just little old Pat Bovey sort of spouting what she learned from from the art gallery in the hospital. I started the art gallery because of the international research. For education and learning, I can point you to all sorts of sites as to the importance of music with children's learning, with the way the visual arts teach 3-dimensional thinking, and the way theater teach the kids to stand up in front of audiences and understand other persona. With crime prevention, I've got tons of statistics on that. And if any of you aren't, but want to be on my mailing list of my speeches that I give in the Senate, we can give you those stats because I gave them in the Senate just the other night. Rural revival, take a look at the Powell River Choral Festival, right? That was a dying community, and look at now, that's one of the most important choral festivals globally. We've talked about the environment, and the tourist statistics are many. So talk about them all, but I believe you should be reading the mandate letters that any premier and any prime minister give to their ministers. And don't just read the words, read what they mean between the lines, and then go to that minister and say, by the way, I hear you're supposed to be working on X. Let me tell you how we can help you do it. And you'll tell them, because they can't do it without us. None of these ministries can do anything without. I mean, they can do some things without us, but they can't meet their mandates without us, right? But it takes us to tell them how to do it. And I'm really looking forward to meeting with the all-party arts caucus in the House of Commons. They've never invited a senator before, so this is you know, I'm putting my Theater 101 to practice when I go to that one. The course I never took.
Our next question is from John. The Canada Council, by its very nature, has long held to a tradition of funding artists on the upper echelons of Canadian society to the exclusion of those of us on the lower echelons. When will funding be set aside exclusively for low-income artists?
That's a really good question. And you know, it's not one I can answer. As a senator, I cannot tell the Canada Council what to do because it's an arm's length organization. I have worked before I was in the Senate for many years in increasing the funds to Canada Council and to Heritage Canada. We were successful a few years ago. I've had many thanks to all of you and who were part of it. And honestly, I'm happy to talk to anybody, anytime. The hundreds of artists and arts organizations I've spoken to, I did put a number of recommendations forward for individual artists, for arts organizations, and for audiences, for both the current budget that the Senate's going to start discussing, I think, on Monday, and the pandemic. I'm very pleased to say that it was coming from you and me pushing it forward that artists became part of CERB. So I'm now working through other ways. Something that hasn't been achieved yet is how do we make sure emerging organizations don't have to be successful financially and audience-wise for 3 years before they get any money, because how can you do it without any money? So that's my next mission. And we can work together on that. And having been one, I have to tell you, the Canada Council and the arts funders said they would not fund my Buhler Gallery at St. Boniface Hospital because it was health. The health funders said they wouldn't fund us because I was arts. And you know what? I found it was easier to raise the money myself. It was such a compelling idea that I was getting money from corporate donors in 90 seconds. I was amazing, right? But it's great, but it's wrong, right? If our nation can't stand up for what is making life better for Canadians, I don't know what our government can do. My late husband's mantra was, and I use it a lot, we are all better off when we are all better off. And I think we have to remember that. And so I will continue to work for artists who aren't the big names. Please know that, but I cannot tell Canada Council what to do. And no Senate bill can be a money bill, can make expenditures. And that's why my declaration respecting the essential role of artists and creative expression in Canada, and as I said, over 600 of you participated in my hearings on this. And I hope I've got the language, I sent in the language that came out of our focus groups. And fortunately, the lawyer in the Senate who turned it into legislative legalese worked for the arts in the UN. So she was really on top of this. And I think she's done really well. And tomorrow's Thursday, isn't it? Tomorrow I'm meeting with a lawyer who teaches human rights at the University of Manitoba, who has been on a number of arts boards. And I'm asking her to compare what I sent in arts-ese and what's come out of the lawyers in legalese, and make sure that everything is captured and not twisted in a wrong way. So I'm here, but any facts you can give me will help me make my message stronger.
I'm watching the clock and I'm sad to say that I know our time with you is up, Senator Bovey. I cannot thank you enough. Your passion is palpable. I have made so many notes through here, and you mentioned early on that idea of the arts as voice and vibrancy. And I just feel like you embody that. It's been really inspirational and educational to listen to you. I know that your schedule is full. Look at all the projects you're involved in. And I know you have to step away after your presentation with us, but my thanks on behalf of everyone here in this Zoom room for your time and your words. And I'm absolutely signing up for the mailing list.
Just email me at the office, and Christine Santongo Anderson, who I think is on this call, she will be glad to add you to the list. And please, it's an honor to be in the Senate. I can honestly say that it's an honor to represent you, and I can do it from my own experience, but I can do it better from your experiences. So this has been a real pleasure for me. So merci beaucoup, et à tous et à toutes, et à bientôt. And anytime, please call. And I'm going to be spending most of my summer in Winnipeg and some of it out in BC. And I'm happy to meet with anybody I can. So take care.
Wonderful.
Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator.
And I am going to slip away. The Senate's sitting in 15 minutes dealing with the environmental legislation that's just come to us. So I'll speak to it from the arts perspective.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you all.